Well, if you're really so determined to have a fight, then I'll oblige.
Hello everybody listening to this around the world on YouTube. My name is Ben Johnson. I am the host of the Kung Fu Movie Guide podcast. Thank you all so much for checking out this conversation from our archive. The conversation you're about to hear was originally released on the 22nd of April 2019. It features my conversation with Bruce Lee's daughter, Shannon Lee. Shannon is an executive producer on the TV series Warrior. She is an actor and she is also the head of the Bruce Lee family estate. You can listen to the latest episodes of this podcast and more conversations in our archive by subscribing to the Kung Fu Movie Guide podcast wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Head over to our website, kungfumovieguide.com, for all the latest martial arts, movie news and reviews. That is also where you can sign up to our monthly newsletter. You can also donate to us and get in touch. We are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you do like what you hear, then do make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I will be back at the end of this conversation to sign off properly. But until then, here we go. Here is my conversation with the great Shannon Lee. Warrior has premiered now. The feedback online and the reviews online as well have been fantastic. Great write-up in Hollywood Reporter, 4 stars in Rolling Stone. You must be over the moon with the reaction of this show. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I'm very happy. I always thought that it was a good show. I was very happy with it, but it's nice to see that other people are enjoying it as well.
Do you read much into the reviews? Like, have you been scouring the internet since it launched to read the reviews?
I have not. I do get sent the reviews, and I will, just sort of glimpse at them. But I'm not really, I try to lead my life through what I feel is right and the authenticity of who I am as a human being, as opposed to what other people think. So while it's not, good to sort of get some feedback and things like that, I try not to put too much stock in other people's opinions.
It's not, but it's lovely when they're saying nice things as well, isn't it? So I guess that's very good.
Yes.
And how are you feeling at this stage of the journey then, Shannon? Because this has been a long process, I guess, to get this show up and running, to get it off the ground. I mean, if we go all the way back to your dad's initial, vision for this goes way back to the late 60s. So you were obviously the main impetus for getting this show off the ground. That's right, isn't it?
Well, I would say yes and no, in the sense that the source material was in my possession for sure. My father created it, as you say, back in the late 60s, early 70s, and then that show did not come to fruition, and it belonged. It sat in our family for decades. There were a number of notes and drafts, but there was also like a final 8-page treatment that was typed by him. That was sort of the clean, presentable, pitched version that he gave to the network, to Warner Brothers, and that served as the sort of kernel of the idea, and then we also had a number of his notes and thoughts and sketches and drafts that he had worked on, so that we could sort of also get into his brain a little bit and see his thought process, which is also really nice.
What was the process then to actually, take that to Cinemax to then get the wheels in motion and getting the show together?
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is this show doesn't exist without Justin Lin. I really have to give him the proper acknowledgement, because even though I had this material in my possession, I was not actively doing anything with it. I had a lot on my plate and many other things I was looking at, and this is one of many treatments that my father wrote. And so while I always had sort of in the back of my mind that I wanted to do something, up to that point in time, I hadn't found like the right partners or really gone out and actively pitched this specific show idea. Yeah. And it was Justin who called me up out of the blue and said, I've always heard this story that your father had created this show for Warner Brothers back in the day and then wasn't cast, and for reasons of race and prejudice and all that. Is that a true story? And I said, yes, it's absolutely true. And actually I have the treatment for the show. And he was like, oh my gosh, do you think there's any way that I could see it? And do you have any interest in making this show? And I said, well, yeah, I would love to. So we got together and I showed him the treatment, and he was really blown away by it. He thought, he could really see what my father was trying to do, and that it was, even though it's written in a much more 70s episodic television style of storytelling, the concept and the kernel of it was very forward-thinking and very still entertaining. And so he said, we should make this show the way your father wanted it to be made.
How close is the final, thing to your dad's vision, would you say? What were the embellishments that were sort of made along the way?
Yeah, well, the essence of the show is all him and all in there, like sort of the basic bone structure of the show, if you will. But, when I say it was told in 70s episodic TV style, it was more of a adventure of the week sort of format, as opposed to, nowadays that kind of, people don't really consume media that way as much anymore. And so, but the character, the main character, who he was, the time period, the idea that he would get caught up in the Tongs and the Tong Wars, the idea that this was, late 1800s San Francisco Chinatown, and that there was this was right before the Chinese Exclusion Act was set to be passed, and all of the issues that caused for the Chinese community of the day, and some of the characters like Bill, the police officer, and things like that were all in his treatment, and the fact that it was the journey of this warrior who immigrates from China to the U.S. and gets caught up in all of this is all in his treatment. Yeah. But we needed to really flesh out the world. I mean, especially if you're going to dive deep into the politics and the setting of the day. Yeah. You need to know who all the different Tong leaders are, and the different players in Chinatown, and the different players in the government, and the police officers, and the working class laborers, and all of that. So so there was such a big world.
And it's a fully rounded world as well. And you're right, a lot of the themes from the show, whether it be immigration, obviously plays a huge part, not just the Chinese community in the show, but the Irish community as well. You're dealing with disenfranchised youth. You're dealing with the allure of the gangster world, and you're also you're dealing with the sort of political maneuvering and the machinations of politics as well. It's a huge concept, isn't it?
It's a lot to have your arms around, and here's where I really have to acknowledge Jonathan Tropper for the amazing job that he did in building these different worlds and the way that they all intertwine and interconnect. And it was our goal to be able to, first of all, do all of this in an entertaining action drama, right? But also be true to the spirit of what was going on at that time. and tell this American story and this Chinese American experience and this immigrant experience as well, so there's like serious historical stuff going on, and there's like awesome kung fu action happening.
Yeah, because it doesn't scrimp on that. And Brett Chan, your fight choreographer, has done such a wonderful job in, really coming up with some really great action scenes there. Obviously demands the best out of your cast, obviously, but you've got people in there who can really do the moves, and it's really refreshing to see that length of time. You must have put a lot of time into those fight scenes as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the way the action is approached in the show was very specifically thought through. We wanted, in paying tribute to my father and his legacy, we wanted the action to feel very impactful and quote unquote real, in the sense that like we want to feel the blows. We don't want it to just be fighting for fighting's sake and choreography for choreography's sake either.
Yeah.
Like the fights, we really want them to be part of the story, and and it's not just violence for violence sake either. It's like there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of characters that are in conflict, and who are trying to sort of put forth their agenda and prove themselves in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And so we want the action to be organic and natural to the telling of the story, and have it be emotionalized as well. And all of that is very Bruce Lee, right?
Yeah.
And he did similar things in his movies, and that was his brand of action. And then also we wanted it to be sort of messy. There are people like the Assam character and the Li Yong character that's played by Joe Taslim, and that are have kung fu expertise. But then there are a lot of characters who are just scrappy. They have knives, they have hatchets. And they're
absolutely.
Just sort of like doing the best that they can, right? And then you have sort of the pugilistic style of like Leary and his out back behind the bar fights and all that kind of stuff. So we wanted each character to have their way of moving their body, and they're different and a different level of it, and it's very impactful and part of the story and all of that. So there was a lot of thought given to like, who is the character? How would they fight? How would they defend themselves in this environment? And what skill level do they have? And then making all of that happen.
What do you think your dad would have made of the show?
I think he would be thrilled. I think he is thrilled. There has been a really great energy and enthusiasm around the show from the beginning. And I think everyone is really excited to be a part of the show. I think the way it came together was really beautiful and with a lot of energy. And I think that he would be thrilled to see his story idea brought to life, finally, like front and center in media, with a Asian cast and a beautiful cast throughout. And
he might have wondered how it took so long to get the show made.
Yeah, well, well, he wasn't here to like push it through. So.
but it's true to say that you just don't see a show like this. The issues that Bruce Lee was dealing with in his lifetime are still issues that are being dealt with today in accurate representation and diversity. He must have been obviously thrilled that the show now is being done, but even 10 years ago, would this show have been made?
I don't know. It feels like the show was made in exactly the right time. We did start working on it prior to like the current administration being in office, and prior to some of the more prevalent representation things that have happened in culture for Asians in particular. But at the same time, there was already a lot of this conversation happening, and it felt like if a show could really get made that in this way and to the degree that we wanted it to be made, that now is the time that it could be made. And it just so happened that as we were preparing it and putting it together and bringing it to life, you know, immigration became a huge forefront conversation and topic in America and in the world. And also, you know, Crazy Rich Asians came out, and Oscars So White, and, you know, all of that started sort of like happening at the same time as well. And so it really was just part of the energy around making this the perfect time for this show. Even though we had started it prior to that, it, you know, I feel like the energy was headed in that direction already, and now the show happens to come out at a time that is extremely, we're able to tell these stories, and it's very relevant to the culture of now.
As the head of, I know that working with your mum as well in protecting the image and the name of Bruce Lee, do you ever feel, you know, that's quite a burden, isn't it, in a way? Or it's quite a lot of pressure to live up to that, because you've got to make decisions that, you know, they've got to be viable, good business decisions, but also at the end of the day, you've still got to respect what, you know, your father's philosophy, his values. How do you find that?
It's definitely a challenge. I have definitely erred on the side of trying to do what I think is best for my father's legacy and philosophy and values over making good business decisions.
Sure. Yeah. But, because you must get approached all the time with business propositions, and, you know, it must be tough for you to, you know, you've got to make that judgment call then, haven't you?
Yeah, for sure. I am approached all the time, and I have to say, you know, my guiding North Star is my father and his values and his philosophies, because he's you know, really setting the tone for what I feel needs to happen now. Am I perfect? Do I make bad decisions sometimes? Yes, definitely. Do things that, you know, not work out a lot of times, or aren't successful, or whatever? Yes, of course. But in general, I really try to stay true to what I think my father's values and vision for his own energy and his own legacy were, and that's very helpful, because it makes it easy to say no. which is a lot of times, you know, I mean, it's a difficult decision to sit with, but I also have, you know, my mom to check in with at times, like, hey, I'm on the fence about this, I'm not really sure, you know. And as time goes on and I have more experience at it, I get better at knowing what that should be and what that is.
You were 4 when he passed away. Do you have memories of him growing up? Do you still remember those?
Yeah, my memories are very, I mean, you know, they're very much like glimpses. Like my memories start when we were living in Hong Kong. But period, like whether they involved him or didn't involve him, that's where they start. And
because he was out there making movies then, wasn't he? When you were really young, like that was just as his film career was sort of taking off really in Hong Kong. Yes, I mean, he went to make his the first movie he made. He went off and made We Stayed Behind in California, and then once that movie came out, it was successful, and he was going to do more. Then we moved to Hong Kong, and when I was 2, and so my memories, you know, I have memories of him at our house or visiting him on set, because we used to go to set quite often to visit him, and because back in those days, they filmed the movies without sound, so you could have kids on the side, you know, not having to be. You could have a 3-year-old on set. It wouldn't be a problem. So. Well, there's a lovely photo of you guys, you and Brandon and your mum with Bruce on the Game of Death set. I think there's some really nice behind the scenes shots of that. But you were too young to remember, I guess, what that was like, or was it just like, oh, there's Dad over there, he's just working, just doing what he's doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have those sort of long-form memories like, oh, I remember that when he came over and he said this or we did that. I have more sort of like glimpses of like imagery of him in my mind, like in different settings. Yeah. But the thing I would say that I remember the most and is my deepest and probably most pure memory of him is, and I thought for many years, I thought I was crazy because I was like, why do I feel like I know this person so well? Like when you ask me the question, like, you know, you have to make decisions and is that hard? And certainly it's hard for a number of reasons, but I've always had this sense of like, I know him and I kind of know what he would want. And I used to think like, well, I must just be insane because how could I possibly know that? But the truth of the matter is I remember what he felt like. I remember his energy. I remember the feeling of him. And the feeling of him was so powerful and so impactful to me as a toddler that I have that. And so there's a part of me that's like, oh, I know this guy, you know? And in a way, like I know him in the most pure kind of way because I don't have that time when I was 16 and wanted to go out on a date and he got mad at me and you know what I mean? Like
those rebellious years.
Or that time that he, you know, punished me for this or that, you know? So or how controlling he was of me growing up or whatever, you know. What I have is this like imprint of this sort of like energetic imprint of him on me.
But did you ever feel a slight sense of, because when you were growing up, did you ever feel yourself sort of distancing away from, because I know you did some martial arts, but and I know that you appeared in movies as well. You had you made movies in Hong Kong, in America as well, and I know you were very passionate about singing, so you seem to have lots of different interests growing up. But then you know, did you feel like, was there a burden to be like, oh, I've got to get into the martial arts, I've got to do you know, get into movies, or not so much?
No, you know, I really have to acknowledge my mom. My mom never forced us kids to do, you know, oh, because you're Bruce Lee's child, you have to do martial arts or you have to get into acting. Or, you know, my brother, from the time he was born, as far as I can tell, throughout his whole life, wanted to act, and he loved acting. After my father passed away, he did not study martial arts. He didn't come to it until he was quite a bit older. I also did not study martial arts during my childhood and also came to it when I was older. But I think for both of us, we wanted to, you know, my brother didn't want to necessarily do action movies. He wanted to he loved the craft of acting and he wanted to act.
He saw that as a good way in, I guess, to the industry. I mean, if you're Bruce Lee's, you know, children, then that's obviously that's an avenue that's going to be readily available to you, isn't it, I guess? Right.
And exactly. And so, but both of us came to martial arts because it was a way for us to know our father. I mean, that's why I came to it. I was like, you know, I want to know. He was so passionate about martial arts. I mean, it was his thing. It was his love, you know? And he even created his own art, right? So, and so I wanted to know what that was. And so that's why I started studying. And then, you know, in terms of acting and doing action and all that, again, as you say, like I love the creative process. So I love to act, I love to sing, I love to write, I even love to like just make things. with paint and glue and all that, but I even approach doing what I'm doing now as an active creation. Like, I have a degree in music. My degree is in vocal performance. I'm a classically trained singer. But so I don't have a business degree or, an MBA or any of that kind of stuff. So I see all of this as, okay, we're going to run a business. We're going to figure out what the best thing to do. That's an act of creativity. Okay, who do we talk to? What do we do? What's possible? Let's figure it out. And so, for me as well, I really didn't enter into acting with the idea of doing action stuff. But again, like, you're Bruce Lee's kid. Those are the offers that you get.
Yeah. But it strikes me as like, did you get sick of that after a while? Because you made a few action movies, and then were you just like, I'm out, this is not for me? My acting career, so I started talking to my brother. I was Brandon's assistant on his film Rapid Fire. Yeah. And then during that time, I started talking to him. I was still living in New Orleans at the time, and during that time, I was talking to him about moving back to LA and starting an acting career, and that I was interested in that. And, he gave me the big brother speech of, like, it's really hard, and, there's a lot of rejection and all that. But then he also said, but if this is something you really want to do, then you should do it. And I'm acting, and I can help you in any way that I can help you, and just know it's going to be challenging, all that. So by the time that I set a plan to move back to LA to pursue an acting career right before my brother was killed. Yeah. So then my brother was killed, and I had this plan, and I was sort of, I really just didn't know what to do other than go through with the plan. So I moved back. Well,
to
that
LA.
It must have been such a, shock for the whole family anyway when that happened, and I guess it would have thrown everything up in the air. But then, I guess if you'd already made that commitment there, then even to honour your brother as well and say, no, Brandon, he believed in me, I could do this, so I'm gonna crack on and see how far I can go with this.
Yeah, and so, I entered into all of that because it was what I had planned to do. I was genuinely interested in acting, but I was now entering into it in this giant pit of despair over, the death of my brother, and moving back to Los Angeles where now he was not going to be. And my mom didn't live in LA anymore at that point, so I was very kind of much alone. I mean, I had grown up there, so I had some old friends and stuff that still lived there, but I hadn't lived there in several years. And so I did go about, pursuing an acting career, but I have to say I was in really deep grief for several years, during that time. When I was trying to pursue an acting career, I was also just barely trying to be a functioning human being. So it really was an ill-fated choice on my part. And while there's a part of me, even today, that's like, if I had an opportunity to do an acting gig, that would be really fun. And in a way, it'd be such a redemptive experience for the acting career that I never really could fully commit to on a heart and soul level, because I just was a shell of a human being. So
well, you are producing a big Cinemax show at the moment, so I don't know, maybe there might be an opportunity there, Shannon.
Yeah, true.
But that's something that you haven't given up. That's something that you still, you would look into in the future, maybe.
Yes. I love the creative process, and it's something I would do. It's not something I would pursue as a career. I'm not going to go out and necessarily and get headshots done and get an agent and go to auditions every day and all that. Yeah. I mean, I'm very interested in what I'm trying to create now, and I've just written a book that is going to be published beginning of next year, and about my father's philosophy and how to use it in your life and all of that. And I see
Great.
these like creative outlets such as acting or singing, which I still do from time to time, as beautiful moments in time where I get to funnel some creative energy. And so, yes, if a project came along and it was the right thing, or it felt good, and there was time, and it felt like really something creatively interesting, then yes, I would definitely entertain that.
I want to talk just quickly about the Bruce Lee Foundation as well, because that's a tremendous thing that you do there. Can you explain a little bit about the origins of that and your involvement in the Bruce Lee Foundation?
So the Bruce Lee Foundation came into being in 2002, so it's been around for a while. There was a foundation prior to that with a much bigger board that was primarily focused on preserving my father's art. It's JKD. That kind of, had a moment in time and then got very complicated. And it's difficult to run a charity and a nonprofit and all of that. And so that organization went away. And in the wake of that, I thought, there's still some really good work we can do by putting forth, educationally, sort of my father's stance as an eternal student, and the drive he had to educate himself and grow as a human being, and I want to continue to pass that message along. And how can we do that? So, the foundation it's a very small organization. It started it's very grassroots, and it's been through many different machinations and done many different things, such as we've done college scholarships, we've done events, we've done museum exhibits and displays, and now we're doing our Camp Bruce Lee project, which is to bring sort of this mind, body, spirit, philosophical martial arts experience to kids in a camp-like setting around my father's legacy. So we're always sort of looking for ways to continue to bring his message forward on an educational level through the foundation as much as possible.
And are you surprised that, the younger generation, how many people have, heard of Bruce Lee and are still inspired by Bruce Lee? That must be quite a, humbling and quite a heartwarming thing as well, Shannon?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I am amazed by sort of the organic Bruce Lee discovery that continues to happen. I mean, yes, over the last many years, I've helped to amplify that, but for many decades, it amplified itself entirely on my father's own steam, if you will. And that's because he led a very intentional and impactful and inspirational life. And he had this foundation of personal work and personal growth that drove him and that made him the force of nature that he was, and also left behind this wealth of information and teachings and learnings from him that can continue to be amplified. It's an interesting thing to me because, other than the internet and social media has helped a lot, but, we have across our social platforms something like 25 million people.
It's incredible, isn't it? Yeah.
Most of
I'm
them
one of them.
are between... Yeah, thank you. and most of them are between the ages of 13 and 34, like 80% of them.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? And you think that, your father passed away in, 45 years ago? 46 years, yeah.
Yeah, and so it just goes to that his life and his teachings and what he believed and how he lived are still very relevant and inspiring today. So,
Warrior Season 2, surely that's a thing that has to happen?
We are hoping so. It helps that the response is very positive to Season 1, so... Yep, fingers crossed.
Fingers
knocking
crossed.
wood, all of that.
And the general being an executive producer and taking that role on a big show, how are you? I know you've produced things in the past, but how are you finding it this time around? Are you enjoying that role?
I am. I'm really enjoying it, and this is definitely the most sort of serious producing job I've ever done.
Yeah.
I mean, to be an executive producer on a TV show is to be the highest level of producer on the show, and one of them. And being involved from seed to germination to fruition, and reading all the scripts and interviewing the writers and sitting in the casting sessions and giving notes on all the cuts and all of that. I mean, it's been a really wonderful experience for me, and I hope to do more of it.
Well, best of luck, Shannon, with your next adventures, and you've produced a really great show, Warrior. It's fantastic viewing. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Ben. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that you are enjoying the show. And thank you for the conversation.
Cool. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to a conversation from the Kung Fu Movie Guide podcast archive. For more episodes, head over to kungfumovieguide.com and wherever it is that you get your podcasts. You can also contact the show and keep up to date with all the latest news via social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and you can always email us. The email address is hello@kungfumovieguide.com. So this is Ben Johnson signing off. Thank you all so much for listening, and until we meet again, do take care and bye for now.